Hey, welcome to the Pandaverse. It's the C&E show. We're here with Christine Gabriel. Christine Davis is visiting us. Ellen's lurking in the background, and we got Nola Nash here.
Hey!
We got a crowd today. Yay!
Woo!
All right. The topics today. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about growing up in Ohio. For all of those of you who didn't grow up in Ohio, it's a banner day there today. The sun's shining.
It is, but it wasn't.
I grew up in Illinois.
Yeah, same kind of weather.
Yeah.
I think Illinois is actually a little colder than Ohio.
At certain times of the year, like
maybe not up where Christine Gabriel lives, but she gets those lake effect snows.
Yeah, it snows pretty rough around here. So enough to build a snowman, have a snowball fight. Yeah, the fun things in life. Slide all over the road.
Snowball
those
fight.
kind of things.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have a snowball fight this winter in Vegas. I'm just guessing. I mean, it's like it snowed here like once in the last 10 years or something like that.
I might in Oklahoma. I'm not sure because that's where I am. It all depends. Sometimes it snows, sometimes it doesn't.
It'll snow in Oklahoma. It snows a lot there at times.
And Central, not as much as Eastern. Eastern gets a little bit more.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up in Ohio, it didn't snow all that often. I think we were in a warm period. At least I don't remember it snowing that much. Anytime it snowed, my dad would stick, Coke bottles into the snowbank in back of the house. So it'd be nice and cold. Sometimes he'd forget and leave them out there and they'd bust.
Oh yeah, I remember walking to school. 5 miles through the snow, uphill. I remember all those things.
Wind in your face, both
Wind in my face, my cheeks feeling like they're gonna fall off.
I remember Northern Illinois. I'm standing there and I can barely see above the snow drifts that are like 15 inches high. And I'm sitting there, please don't make the bus come. Please don't make the bus. But it came every time.
Yep. Yeah. And we would take like some of the tall like snow drifts and we'd build tunnels through them. We just prayed it would fall on us. But we got pretty lucky. We had a lot of fun with it. The igloo, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, we did that. I loved that. Made you feel like you were in a whole different world because it was all, if the sun got through, it was like blue and made you feel great.
Kids nowadays, they need to get outside and they need to experience these things because, those were some of my most treasured memories as a kid. And I feel like nowadays, some kids would just rather stay in because, the cold is right.
I had to go hunting with my dad, too. We were in an area. Yeah, we had to go deer hunting and stuff. My dad would wake me up at 8 o'clock in the morning and say, get your stuff. I'm like, Dad, it's 8 o'clock on a Saturday. Nope, gotta go now.
I come from a hunting family also. My dad, my brother, my son, he went hunting and got his first deer. So it's this time of year, it's getting to be where everything, all the deer meat, deer roast, all those good fun yummy things come into play, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the season.
I miss venison steaks.
We were more into hunting pheasant and quail.
Really?
Yeah, we would hunt rabbit too, but we would give them away because my mom refused to prepare them. She said. And she definitely wouldn't eat them because she said it would remind her of trying to eat a cat or something. I said, so you have experience with that or something?
My dad made a great raccoon curry. She needs his recipe.
Something I'm not sure I've ever had.
That sounds like something Granny Clampett would make.
Oh, you gotta know my dad.
I'd come home and there'd be skinned like rabbits and squirrels sitting in our kitchen sink. I was like, oh, Dad's been hunting. Tell my friends, don't mind the dead animal in the sink. We're going to eat it later.
Roadkill.
I think we're probably like, oh my gosh.
Let me get the
We'll
tire
be home
truck.
by 6.
Yeah.
My parents are having pizza.
Roadkill pizza. There's actually a place up in the Northeast. I think it's in Maine. It's called the Roadkill Diner.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but their food's really good. I mean, it's one of those cases, where, it's the opposite of what you would think. But
How about you, Nola? What's one of the most interesting things that you've ever eaten?
Sorry, my volume was like way too far down. Tell me again. What was it?
The most interesting thing you've ever eaten.
Alligator.
Really? How does it taste? Tell us.
Like chicken.
yeah, like chicken.
Yeah, really, it does. I had alligator when I visited my grandparents. in
It tastes like
Florida.
chicken. Like you actually, they say that, but yeah, it does.
They have places. They have seafood places in Florida that serve alligator.
Mhm.
Alligator.
There's a place in the French Quarter that serves it made into a sausage on a stick, and you just walk around with your alligator sausage on a stick.
Nola,
I
when
saw
we go
that
to New
one,
Orleans,
yeah.
you gotta get me one of those.
Alligator and hush puppies.
What an alligator sausage on a stick.
It's
I
so
was in-
good. You gotta have that. It's delicious. It's a little spicy once they put it in the sausage. Of course, everything they do in New Orleans, and they put it in the sausage. It's spicy then, kind of like andouille, but it's delicious. It's really, really good. Yes, we will have when we go to New Orleans. See, we're gonna get one.
I went to New Orleans once, and I wanted to go to that restaurant that was supposed to be a house for Napoleon, and they have supposed to have the best muffulettas there, and I never got to go.
Aw.
I'll tell you what.
That's time. You can
They
still-
do not. They don't have the best muffaletta. Napoleon House does not have the best muffaletta. And now I might get slaughtered for saying that on the internet. Keep your comments to yourselves, people. I'm a local girl. I can say that. I'll tell you where the best muffaletta is, and it is worth the line you will have to stand in to get it. The best muffaletta is at Central Grocery. And you
Oh.
want to go there. It is right in the French Quarter, right across from the French Market, down in that area. And it looks like your cover for an Italian mob operation, because it looks like it's on the ship since like the 1940s. But they make the best muffaletta that you will get in the French Quarter. I'll tell you right now. I will swear by that.
Question. What is
Okay.
What is muffaletta?
I gotta go.
muffaletta.
Yeah.
You want to tell her what it is, Christine?
Oh, it's a huge giant sandwich. It's got like layers of meat and coleslaw, and it's just huge. And I didn't get to eat one. I was so upset.
It has an olive tapenade on the top of it, which is really kind of the main thing. Most places in the quarter are going to sell, in the city of New Orleans, are going to sell a muffaletta whole, which don't ever do that. It would take 4 people to eat a muffaletta whole. More than that. You'll generally get a quarter of a muffaletta, and it's like about that big, and then it's like a triangle. It's about that tall, maybe bigger. You can't get your whole mouth over it. It's got a meat like that, then there's some cheese, then there's this massive thick layer of olive tapenade, and it's the olives and the cold cuts and the cheese and that bread all together that makes it the most delectable thing you're ever going to eat in the sandwich world, except for maybe a po' boy on really, really, really good French bread made down in the quarter. But the
I
muffaletta.
didn't get the po' boy either. I'm so
Christine, what
sorry.
were you doing in New Orleans?
I wasn't, well,
She wasn't eating it. Did you eat crawdads in these?
yes, I had crawdads, and I had, I went to the cooking school there, and they taught us how to make jambalaya, and
That's fun.
yeah, that was good. Jambalaya and
That's
and
kind of like
gumbo.
throwing everything into a pot, isn't it?
It kind of is. It's like all the seasonings and the peppers and the onions, and that one's rice heavy. That one, a lot of food in New Orleans is rice heavy, mostly because they use the rice to stretch the food. Because it's Cajun food is the food of the poor down there. It kind of started that way. The same thing with the po' boy, and so lots of bread and lots of rice were how they actually stretched the food over more meals, and just a few ingredients that they could afford, and made it enough to feed everybody. So, but jambalaya is mostly rice in the dish. But it's
I
so
did find my favorite drink down there, the Hurricane.
hurricane and I keep on your butt. Now we know what Christine was doing in New Orleans.
Yes, I was drinking Hurricanes. They're good.
I'm surprised she remembers being there.
Maybe she did eat a
Yeah, I was
full
there
she
for a
just
week.
doesn't remember.
Maybe so.
Awesome.
Maybe I had that muffalata. I just can't remember.
You'd remember. You'd remember the muffaletta, especially if you got it from Central Grocery.
Oh, I'm so upset I never did. At least now if I ever go back, I know where to go.
Yep. And stand in that line. I don't care if you look at it and go, oh my God, there's such a line. Yes, there is. Yes, there's a reason. Yes, it moves fast.
When I was growing up in Ohio, there was a lot of different things that we ate, but it's mostly, my parents come from Eastern Kentucky, so it was a lot of Southern type food, kind of bland, not really super spicy like it would be in the far South. For some reason, I think the farther south you go, the more spicy you have to make the food so that you can bring out the sweat so you can cool yourself off, in the middle of the summer. That's just a working theory of mine. I remember we used to eat a lot of watermelon, right? A lot of fried chicken. We lived on a farm, so we raised our own meat. So we had a deep freeze full of pork and beef and stuff like that. So we always had hamburgers. We always had steak. So, I mean, it was a tough life growing up, but.
My dad's a butcher, so if I didn't eat meat, I don't know how that would go.
You'd be disowned.
Yeah,
He's even got like a tattoo, his first tattoo, and it says like Master Butcher. So with a cleaver. Hey Dad, if you're watching.
Don't mess with the guy with a cleaver tattooed on him.
My mom was half Indian and half Russian. She didn't know her Indian side family very well, but the Russian influence came through because we had postal kielbasa, potato pancakes, and so I had that from my mom's side, and my dad was German and English, so he ended up the Krugels and the oh, it's Mid-Eastern, European style stuff.
So, Elgon, growing up in Kentucky, you ever have a hot brown? I've never had a hot brown, but I've heard about them up there.
I've never. I didn't grow up in Kentucky. I grew up in Ohio, but my parents.
Well, it was your mom or I forgot who you said was from Kentucky.
Mom and dad grew up in Kentucky. They grew up on opposite sides of a hill in eastern Kentucky. My dad's from Williams Creek, and my mom's from Fife Branch, which is part of the old Paint River system there, or what. I mean, I'm not an expert on eastern Kentucky geography, but I've been there a few times, saw where they grew up and everything. But, interesting trips. The food that we ate while we were there was all the same stuff that I ate at home. I had like no taste in food until I went to college, and then people were saying, "Oh, you got to try this. You got to try this. You got to try this," and so that broadened my horizons quite a bit. The most exotic thing that I ate growing up was pizza, and it wasn't real pizza. It was like Chef Boyardee pizza that you made.
Yeah, I know that pizza well.
But my sisters used to like slicing up onions and putting onions on it, and I thought that was pretty good. And then I went to Springfield, which was the big city, like 83,000 people at the time. I have no idea how many people were there, probably the same. But there was this pizza place there called Casano's, and they have really, really good pizza, but they would have some kind of experimental things like peanut pizza, and it's actually pretty good.
Can I have one peanut pizza, please?
Coming from growing up in Chicago, you know that I had Chicago
Oh, yeah.
deep
Deep dish.
pizza. There is nothing like that. You ever get up to the Chicago area, the northern where I was, about 40 miles north of Chicago, go to the Quonset Hut and get their deep dish pizza. You'll never want another pizza.
We went to Chicago for C2E2, and we went. What restaurant was that we went to?
I have no idea. I don't remember what. I could walk there from the McCormick Center. I know how to get there.
That was our first time having that deep dish Chicago style pizza, and it was
yeah, it's the best.
I've had it before because my roommate was from Chicago. He was from Palace Heights.
Oh, yeah.
We hung out in Chicago a couple of times. We ate at some of the restaurants there. Yeah, Chicago's got great food.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago, it has. When I was 17, this might sound very old fashioned, but I used to go down to Chicago for finishing school. I don't even know if they do that anymore. But I used to walk down there, and some of my friends from finishing school used to sometimes take me around the restaurants. And I didn't know you could put cheese on and chili on top of French fries until I was doing that, and I fell in love with that.
That's the best.
I tell you, when I was in Chicago, one of the best things that I ate when I went there, a friend of mine took me to an Ethiopian restaurant. And wow, that is such good food. I didn't know about Ethiopian food until I went to Chicago. I mean, there's so many different nationalities, and I mean, we got a lot of nationalities in South Louisiana and in Nashville area too, but I don't know of an Ethiopian restaurant in Nashville. It was really good. If we had one, I would go there and eat that. If somebody tells me, hey, there's Ethiopian, I would go because it's so good. And I love the bread that you use. You don't use forks. There's no utensils. You just pick up everything with the little spongy bread. It was so good. That's really funny that the trip to Chicago, and what I remember about the food is Ethiopian food.
Yeah, they do that special
that
bread by
cool.
There's these special kilns that they have Ethiopian in Africa. It's kind of like conical shape, but there's like a hole in the bottom, and they take the bread and they make it's round, and they slap it upside the inside of that oven. And so the bread just slapped them inside the oven, and it cooks that way. They peel the bread off. It's a pretty neat way that they make that bread. I mean,
kind of like how they do naan. Naan bread is done similar. It's just a thicker bread. The Ethiopian is more spongy, but the naan bread is more of a gluten-y kind of like pizza dough kind of bread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love breads.
Me too. Oh, it's a weakness.
They have a lot of high-class restaurants in Chicago, too. I remember one of the original Pandas was Emily Belden. She wrote a book called 86, which is a term when something's no longer available on the menu because they ran out of the ingredients or whatever they prepared for the day.
Yeah, they 86 it.
But that's a really good book. It's kind of a it's a really snarky read. With the backstory and everything, but the main character in it, which is Emily, because it's she floats around from fancy restaurant to fancy restaurant, meeting these great chefs, and if you love food, you'll like the book, and it's kind of like
Bridget Jones.
Yeah, Bridget Jones' Diary. It reminded me a lot of that. I never read that book, but I saw the movie.
I read a lot of
movie's
books.
okay, but everybody tells me the book's better.
His book is better.
I read a lot of books about food, mainly because my master's level degree was in gastronomy, and I was like the only, because I was an artist, and I was the only one in that class that wasn't like a chef at some famous place. But I read so much about food and learned so much about it. And I wanted to become a food writer. I just never did.
Oh, you should. You should. You could still do it.
Yeah.
You
I
could.
will have to think about that.
You should. It would be, I think, it's one of those things where, if you've dreamt it, why not go do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just eat and talk.
Eat, talk,
We're all
and write.
about people pursuing their goals. That kind of brings me on to another subject that we were going to discuss, which is dealing with bullying and growing up. I know Christine had to put up with a lot of that. I put up with a lot of that. I was big for my age, so for some reason, all these little sawed-off runt bullies wanted to pick on me because I didn't fight, didn't defend myself. I didn't see any point in fighting. I was pretty passive. I still am. But I mean, my dad used to get aggravated about. I mean, he understood that I didn't want to fight. But he used to tell me, the Bible says, that if somebody smites you on one cheek, turn and let him smite you on the other. And my dad's theory was anybody that's stupid enough to hit you twice deserves to get knocked down. Beat the tar out of him, my dad used to say. I was in the 8th grade before the thing snapped, the whole situation. I just got fed up with it. And this kid that wasn't my primary torturer, it was just a kid that was trying to make a name for himself, picked a fight with me in music class in the 8th grade. And he jumped on me and everything like that. And he wore glasses. I told him to take his glasses off. And about the time he took his glasses off, I decked him.
Nice move.
Later that day, there was a parade. I think it was around Halloween, but they've been having a parade outside, and everybody went out to watch the parade. And he came up behind me and tried to sucker punch me. Tapped on my shoulder, and as I turned around, he punched me. The movie where Burt Reynolds hauls off and punches Terry Bradshaw, and Terry Bradshaw just spits out a tooth at him. Stands there, doesn't even flinch. It must have been like that because his punch didn't land very well. And I just looked at him. I said, "You're in a lot of trouble."
No, I feel you on that one. I went to a Catholic school growing up, and my family was quite large, so we didn't have a lot of money. So I was kind of an easy target. I was small. I was quiet. I was, with big glasses and big buck teeth and frizzy hair, and so it was pretty lonely growing up. About 4th grade, I finally talked my mom into letting me go to public school, and it was really good until about junior high. When everybody has to, find their place, I guess, in high school. And I didn't really have a place in high school because I was very shy. Can you believe that? Me? Shy. I was. And so it was tough, the girl cliques would pick on me relentlessly. And my worst memory ever was because I had, that mousy hair and big buck teeth. They told me I looked like a mouse, and they would leave little plastic mice in my desk and cheese and stuff in my locker. So it was pretty rough. It was I ended up going to I was gonna go to medical school. I was pretty smart, so as a junior in high school I got to go to college. So I got to leave high school and go to college, and that's when everything stopped because I grew up and it's better than that. I stopped letting it bother me. Just tough.
I had a fun time with high school, and I'm saying that sarcastically, because I had a very popular brother. I was very, very shy. And my brother was captain of the football team. Him and his girlfriend were voted cutest couple. And he was really tough, you know. He didn't take no nonsense from people. But since I was shy and I was always trying to, you know, stay out of the limelight, what happened is that I got more times than I can think, people who were either mad at my brother or girls who felt like they were put off by him would come around and be nasty to me. One of the worst times I can remember, I was sitting first day in driver's ed class, and I'm a sophomore, and a really, really popular girl, her name was Kelly, curly blonde hair and everything, and she had all the guys gathered around her up front of the class. And then all of a sudden I heard her voice raise, and she said, if you're ever mad at Rick Kenyon was my maiden name, if you're mad at Rick Kenyon and you're too afraid to beat him up, just go beat up his sister. She's right over there. And she turned around and pointed at me, and everybody in the class looked at me. Aww. And I just sunk down. I failed driver's ed too because I was too nervous. And things like that happened a lot.
It's just amazing how cruel, you know, kids can be. And I think, you know, a lot of those stories obviously have stuck with us, you know, and I think it's really important for our young people to know that they're not alone. You know, there are so many people out there that love them, and that you know, there are people out there that are thinking of them, and they just don't realize that. And I think that it's really hard for our young people nowadays to take those things in, you know what I mean, and just realize they are loved by other people. Because, you know, with the internet and, you know, social media, it's just so tough for them. I think it's tougher than when we were children.
Yeah, it just amplified and exacerbates the problem. I learned from my experiences, you got to stand up for yourself because nobody else is going to do it. I mean, if you're counting on your parents to intervene, that only causes more problems. You've got to defend yourself, and even if, you know, you get punished a couple of times because the teacher saw you fight back and thought you were starting to fight, you got to stand your ground at some point. And that's the only way that you can, at least for boys, that's the only way you can deter it. I mean, I remember being physically sick of my stomach sometimes going to school because I knew that, you know, a bully had tortured me the previous day and I was going to have to listen to his crap again, you know. But after I defended myself, they kind of backed away. So, I mean, I'm not telling you to go fight. I mean, that may not be the right thing to do for people. You know, everybody's got their own situation that they have to deal with, but you really need to stand up for yourself, and you need to have faith in yourself, believe in yourself, and, you know, you're worthwhile, regardless of what anybody else is telling you. You're the only you that's ever lived in the world.
This high school stuff, this elementary stuff, it doesn't matter. Once you get into the real world, you're going to make real friends. You'll carry some real friends with you, very few from high school, but this great big world offers so many opportunities and possibilities, and you just have to get there. And you will get there because you have people out there that love you, and you just got pushed through, because this stuff right now in high school, it's not going to matter 5 years after high school. It's not going to matter a year after high school, once you go to college, and, you know, once you go to trade school, or once you just get out into the world and do your own thing and find who you are. You'll find your crowd and your type of people that you want to be around, and those people will love you for you.
There's a scientist named Dawkins. He's British. He wrote a book a while back. I forget his first name. I think it's Richard Dawkins. He said in his book that you're the lottery winner because of all the different combinations of DNA and genetic material that could be combined to put you together. The possibilities of people would be larger than the grains of sand in the Sahara. So the odds of you being born are astronomical in the first place. So you need to take what life has given you, and you need to explore it to its fullest and really explore your own uniqueness. So.
It's also very hard for kids right now, because I was reading in the news that because of all the isolation that's going on right now, the teen suicides are up about 40%. And that really floored me, thinking about how they're going through this right now. I mean, it's not even bullying, although bullying online happens. It's just the isolation that's getting them right now. And that's really scary.
And I
Especially
think
teenagers.
it may be a combination of the two things, the isolation and the online bullying, because what they have is they have the access to online. And I teach middle school, and I've talked to my students about this a lot. It becomes easier and easier to say hurtful things to somebody through a text message, online, because you have the safety of the screen between you. You don't have to see the face, you don't have to see the reaction. It's a whole lot easier to say those hurtful things because you're not dealing immediately with the response. But what they're lacking, because they only have the screens right now, and there's so much of that, but what they're lacking is the support system of the people around them that they may see in person. If there's something that goes down in a hallway, chances are they've got somebody walking alongside of them that saw that and really, dude, that guy's just a jerk. Just, don't ignore that. And so you lose that immediate support that you have for that incident. And so I think able to throw anything, they can just say whatever they want. And so it's a weird combination for the kids today.
We got a teenager that lives in the house where I rent a room, and she's really missing her friends a lot too. But she interacts a lot with the rest of us, but it's not the same as being with your friends. And when you're a teenager, you're building your own personality, and your friends affect that. They influence it, and they help you build your own sense of self-worth and everything. So, the lockdowns are rough on everybody, but it's especially rough on kids.
And they're also losing access to those helps that they have in place too, that maybe they're not vocal about going and seeking out, but the counselors and the therapists and other parents maybe that they can talk to easier, best friends, parents that maybe they can have these conversations with that they don't necessarily feel comfortable having with their own parents. So they've lost supports.
I think at that age you're so self-conscious. You think that a little pimple on your forehead is a raging volcano. You over-exaggerate things, and you think you're very aware of your body. You take a lot of baths and long baths, and you're becoming very aware of everything about yourself, and you're not sure if you're good, if you rate with the other people. So you're questioning all that, and you're throwing this terrible disease in the middle of all that, and you're trying to isolate so that you don't come down with this or infect somebody else that would be even more impacted by it. And it's a bad situation we're in all the way around, but it especially affects kids.
Even at college age kids, because my son, who is a second-year law student, and he has, the work he has to do, even his internship, he has a lot of pressure on that work, has to get it in, and he's calling me more often and talking about how difficult these things were and how much easier it would have been if they could have been in classes. Physically.
All the coursework's designed for a classroom environment, and we're pushing it out, over the internet and trying to make do with it.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I asked them how
I'm worried about the quality of education that the kids are going to get from it. I'm hoping we come up with a solution to this the situation we're in, and a cure for the virus or something. But so we can get back to some kind of a normalcy. But it's a challenge for everybody.
I think two things are happening in education right now, and I think we're hitting a speed bump just with some of the things that are not being able to be delivered in the traditional way. And I've got two kids in college right now, and one of them is on campus and one of them is taking courses remotely. And one is a freshman and one's a senior in college. And it's interesting, the dynamic and what's going on, especially in higher ed. I mean, I know what we're doing at the middle school, and I mean, I'm teaching entirely online. Yes, it has changed what I do, but it's also, and it's changing a lot of people. And what it actually comes down to is the willingness to change and to do things differently, because there are some teachers that I'm working with that are beating their heads against the wall because they're trying to do the same thing they did in the classroom, but do it online, and it's not working. And so it's flipping and changing how you deliver the same kind of instruction and how you build those relationships just in a different way. And the colleges are doing very much the same thing. They're finding those avenues to create those opportunities for those kids, but having to do it in a different way. What we're experiencing right now is the learning curve, and those growing pains. But I think what's going to, I mean, personally, what I feel is going to come out of this with education is actually a stronger education system, because now you're creating more avenues and more variety for a wider range of students. Yeah. Students got pigeonholed into what education put out there for them, and now what they're going to experience as a result of this is choice. And that's going to be key, especially for some of these kids. We're going back to the bullying thing. There are some kids that are not going to thrive on a school campus because their anxiety level is maybe through the roof with things that they can't control. Right. So you can pull them into an online school situation where they're going to be able to focus on that education, that then they'll have after school extracurricular opportunities that are designed specifically for their interests and the kids that are like them, that they're going to feel comfortable with. And so they'll develop those friendships and the social structure that they need there, while being able to focus on the academics that they were not able to focus on in a traditional setting because of those other issues. So I think that for now we have a little bit of a problem, and there a little bit of a growing pains. But ultimately, what we're going to have as people kind of embrace the new educational system is going to be one with a wider range, a wider variety, that's going to better help and better target individual students. And so I see this as actually kind of an awakening for the education system that has actually been in need of a shakeup for quite some time. So from a teacher's perspective, and from a parent of two college students in different places and doing it differently this year, that's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it now.
No, I think how you explain that is perfect, because it is going to give them choice. It is going to broaden so many different things. I think how you explain that is wonderful.
Well, we haven't.
It's really good for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even touched the topic of books, really. I mean, we've kind of.
No, yes, I haven't.
But you know what? Everything that we go through in life, including our current situations, everything that we grew up with in the past, the bullying and the harassment, and meeting certain people and not meeting certain people, all influenced us, and it filters into our books in some way.
It makes us who we are.
I mean, my Thuperman series, the kid in there that was bullied, growing up, and his best friend, who's a girl, actually is kind of a tomboy, and she defended him a few times, which was embarrassing in its way for him, because he always felt like he should be able to defend himself. But he was glad to have her there because she was kind of big for her age, and she didn't take any crap from anybody. So, I mean, it's a good dynamic between the two of them, and I know you have some situations that filtered into your books too, Christine.
Yeah, now I just lead people into a scary forest, and whatever happens.
Yeah, let the red moss get them.
Well, on the topic of that, let's move on to ghost stories.
Ghost stories.
Yay!
Now I know that Nola has one for us. She's got the best ghost stories I've ever heard, ever.
Well, on the second line show, I told you the story of the hanging boy. So since you've heard that one, I'll tell you a different story if you would like.
Yes.
Yes.
There are so many great New Orleans stories. And one of the great stories, the stories always come through real estate, which is really kind of the funny thing. If you walk through the French Quarter, you'll see signs that say haunted or not haunted. They actually, by not haunted on the sign, is actually probably telling you it's going to be cheaper than if it was haunted, because people want the haunted houses. So you hear these stories and they stay kind of circulating because of, oddly, the real estate market and just the ghost tours and things. There is a story of, there's one house that over time has been turned into apartments. It's just kind of been sectioned off like some of the houses are. And one of the apartments seems to constantly be coming up for rent. And they just cannot keep a tenant in this apartment. Some people have just kind of felt weird about it and just like, I don't know, don't like it, something's not right here, or they're constantly having problems with, you know, things breaking and, you know, constant maintenance headaches, and they don't want anything to do with it. But that's what they're just saying. Some people have been a lot more forthcoming about why they are moving out of that apartment. And the story goes, the one who kind of really told the truth about what's going on in that apartment. Story goes, is a young lady had rented the apartment. She lived by herself. It was, you know, it's a little kind of one-bedroom studio thing. And she felt really kind of odd about it, but she thought, okay, it's just because everybody else has said it. They can't keep anybody living here. I'm just, you know, she's going to be really real about it. She woke up in the middle of the night one night, and there was a man sitting at the foot of her bed. Just sitting there. And of course she thinks, you know, she's dreaming. It's like we're like scared her to death, and she kind of blinks and he's gone. And night after night, he would show up and just sit at the foot of her bed. And so it got to where she wasn't sleeping. She wasn't sleeping real well. She didn't want to go to sleep. She started looking for another apartment, and things just, you know, he just kept showing up. And then finally it got to the point where she could not stand her nocturnal visitor anymore, and she moved out. And so that story kind of spread. But, you know, man sitting on the foot of my bed night after night is not generally in your lease for how to break it. You know, this is not a clause that's in there for moving out. And so the people who would rent this apartment would have to find different reasons for getting out of the lease. And so other stories circulate, but the truth of the matter and what they cannot say and what, you know, as they're breaking their lease is it was someone who died in the home who is, you know, in that part of the, you know, the home that had been sectioned off, in that part of it that had become that apartment, that was sort of where he died. And so he haunted that little apartment and would sit at the foot of the bed of anyone who was in there. And nobody really knows who he is or why he does that, but he is there. So the question then becomes, you know, he never did anything to them. So is he just simply watching over someone and he's an okay guy and you should just get used to him? But at the same time, he's a bit distracting to your life. And who really wants to wake up, you know, every night to somebody sitting at the foot of their bed? And it's to the point where, like, you know, they could almost feel him sit down. Like whatever he did when he sat down was enough to wake them up. And so that is, you know, one of those little apartments in New Orleans. You know, be careful what you sign a lease on and for how long you sign it. Check those clauses and make sure there's a loophole that you can get out. You never know who's going to show up and sit at the foot of your bed.
My mom and dad, they live in a little village. It's the village of Monroeville, and it was very active during Underground Railroad days. Their house was built in like 1803. One day my dad and his friend were remodeling this old house, and they were tearing down a wall, and they found all kinds of things. They found, they had like a winding wooden staircase, and there was a room, and it goes all the way up, and I'm going to guess maybe they would hide people there. And there were tunnels that went from like a restaurant to like different houses throughout our village. There were a lot of interesting things that happened in that home. And one of them, I was probably about 13 or 14, and I was very sick. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and my mom is a big antique collector. So we had antique rocking chairs, paintings, all different kinds of things. And I had woken up and I had turned and I saw this lady in this old Victorian dress, and she had her hair in like a bun, and she was rocking back and forth. And she looked at me and she said, "Everything will be all right." Well, I fell asleep, and then I woke back up and I was very thirsty. And I looked around me, and there were people with different era like clothing on. And they all like surrounded me, and they picked me up. And the next morning I woke up on our couch with a glass of water next to me, which was a little odd. About a year later, my parents had a visitor. There were a couple from Orange County, California, and their great ancestor. They had lived in our house, and she showed us pictures. And I swear to this day, the lady in the photograph was the lady that was sitting in the orange.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That my mom has had that house blessed. The lady, when she came to bless the home, she said there were so many active spirits that she had to come back and re-bless it again. And it's kind of interesting home to grow up in.
Did the blessing work?
It did for a while. My mom would tell me she had these really awful nightmares, and one of the nightmares actually stuck out really well. She said she was asleep and she heard something and she woke up, and when she opened her eyes, she was on her back, and this is still scary to this day. There were like dark hands coming out of the ceiling, and they were trying to grab her. So, I couldn't imagine. You know. So yeah, it was. There's a lot that's happened there. It's been interesting.
I was wondering if she still lives there.
Yeah, my parents still live there.
Okay.
My
Friends, they're good.
my parents bought a farm. Christine's actually been there, and my parents were going to build, a new house on the farm. They weren't going to live in the old farmhouse, but my dad wanted to remodel the farmhouse, and so that was like pretty much a year-long project in my dad's spare time. Mostly in the winter because you don't do a lot on a farm during the winter. So we remodeled the downstairs and finished it off. The rest of the house, had like butternut woodwork and everything like that. So it was beautiful. But we like closed off the downstairs area, made it so that, it was kind of like an apartment that you could rent out. At that time, my oldest sister and her husband had kind of a falling out, so they separated, and then they ended up, my sister moved in with us for a little while, and then she ended up moving into the apartment that we'd made in that house. She got back with her husband, and he moved in too. And she was always, like, her husband worked for Ohio Edison in Springfield, which is a power company, and he worked the night shift there. So my sister Joyce was always alone in the house, and she wanted me to come over and spend time with her because she kept hearing noises and all kinds of weird things going on in the house. And of course, my parents, who don't believe in ghosts or anything, thought that it was just her imagination going on. So I would go over there like on Friday night to watch Star Trek on TV. It was like 1966, I think it was, and 65 or 66. So I would go over and spend the night with her. Like one of the times that I was over there, somebody we thought came to the door, a door that was like on a section that they didn't use. It was kind of closed off, and knocked on that door. So we thought, somebody had come to the wrong door. So, of course, me, I'm super brave and don't believe anything's going to hurt me. I go walking outside, see who's there. Nobody in the driveway. I go walking around the house. There's nobody outside. Go back in, and we're watching some more TV, and there's another knock on the door again. My sister's like, that happens all the time. I said, there's somebody knocking on the door. She says, either that or you hear running on the hall stairs, upstairs in the house. And yeah, the house was haunted. So my dad and I are over there repairing the front porch because it's kind of got dry rot and everything, and some termite damage. So we had to replace some of the woodwork on the house. And the house has these slabs of marble just laying on the ground that the supports on the porch were in, and also the steps were marble. So I'm like, this was a really expensive house when it was built. My dad was like telling me a story that there was these two brothers that had a rivalry between them, and they wanted to outdo each other. And the next house down the road, which was also haunted, by the way, because we ended up buying that, that house was the brother who wanted to one up the other brother that this house was. But both of the houses had these marble steps and marble supports on their porches. And my dad and I are in the process of trying to repair this. We want to move the marble out of the way because we didn't want to destroy it. So we're like lifting the steps, and I decided, you know, it would be easier if we just like rolled the steps over, you know, and got them on the ground instead of trying to carry them because they were kind of heavy. We flipped the first step over, and it's a tombstone.
Yeah. Was not expecting that.
And I'm like staring at it. I mean, it's got somebody's name on it, the date, you know, and so my dad did some research with, you know, the county, and found out that on our land there was there's like this creek that went through the land. It was Massey Creek, and there's a Y in the creek there, the different branches of the creek. And there used to be an old church there, and there was a cemetery on the property. But there's, I mean, that was farmland now. I mean, they were growing stuff on the farmland there. And the story was that there was a flood, you know, that like flooded the entire area and knocked all the tombstones off their actual base, you know, where they were, and they couldn't figure out where the people were. So they just, you know, kind of like stacked them and left them there for a while. They couldn't figure out where the graves were, so they didn't want to mark the graves. Well, these guys that were building these houses on the farm decided they were going to use them as steps and foundation material for their house, I guess.
No,
Waste not, want not.
I
Yeah,
guess not.
yeah, except he like haunted the house forever now. But so my dad and I made, you know, concrete steps for this house, and we removed all the tombstones and took them back to where the area was supposed to be, and we dug out the ground there with, you know, heavy equipment, dug down enough to put the tombstones underground, but it wouldn't affect your farming. So we like laid out all the tombstones there and then covered it.
Wow.
I don't know if that fixed the problem, Rob. But there's people living in those houses because, you know, I drove by them.
Reminds me a little bit of Poltergeist, that movie.
Poltergeist?
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poltergeist 2 was my favorite actual scary movie. That older gentleman in that movie is terrifying.
Yeah,
I don't have a ghost
Poltergeist was
story
great.
or anything, but I do have something that should have been, you would think would be a ghost story. Because when I was growing up, we lived in a farmhouse. It's almost 200 years old now. And it's up in northern Illinois in Gurnee. And when we first moved in there, I was just a little kid. And my dad was looking around in the garage, and he found this really neat, round, heavy dining room table, and he brought it in, put it in the kitchen, and, you know, cleaned it up, decided we're going to use it. And it had this little, like, you know, it was one of those ones that has extenders, but when it's closed, there's like this little area that had a chunk of it. We never really knew why that was, but we thought, well, it's a good table, we'll just use it. And then our neighbor comes by and see how, you know, moving in, and goes, oh, you got the table where Wilson killed himself. I was like, what? And he pointed to where the chunk was and said, that's the guy who lived here before you. He laid his head on a table and blew his brains out right there. And just looking at the table, and I was, okay. I mean, that was haunted, but we ate on that table.
Yeah, I was just
for years. And I always look at that
was,
spot. I'm like, man.
I don't know how I feel about that.
That's awful.
Yeah.
It's a good table.
Yeah.
My dad actually still has that table and uses it.
So here's the deal, folks. Christine, Gabriel, and I are going to have like a contest for people to comment, you know, when this is up on YouTube. You know, comment with your favorite ghost story, you know, your true ghost story or whatever, because I'm sure people out there have ghost stories. I mean, it's not normal for people to talk about ghosts and believe in ghosts and everything, but I think
I want
everybody
to hear it.
does.
Unless you're from Louisiana,
Yeah.
that's sort of the
mean,
crux
that's
of
a-
our being. We talk about that.
Well,
Sorry, our tourism is based on
Yeah.
that.
yeah, well, New Orleans is kind of like in a different universe. So
Yeah.
so
I'll go with that. I agree. I'll own it.
in one of my upcoming books, there is an actual alternate universe version of New Orleans, which is kind of redundant, I know, but
But tell them what we're giving away, Elgon.
we're giving away a $25 gift card from Amazon.
That's a nice one.
Yeah. So guys, comment, if you have scary pictures, if you've had a paranormal experience, we want to hear about it. So give us your comments, show us the pictures. It'll be
Let us know how freaky you are.
Elgon, no, never say
I
that
want
on
to
the
temper
internet,
that one a little
Elgon.
bit. This is YouTube. You could get a lot of comments on that part.
Yeah, Elgon.
But this may go sadly awry.
Keep it clean.
Ghost stories, people.
Oh.
Freaky
Ghost
ghost
freaky.
stories.
Freaky
I
ghost.
want to read them all.
We'll end it there for today. Thank everybody for being here. It was a lot of fun. Doesn't seem
Yes,
like
it
you've been
was.
here for an hour, does it?
And Elgin and Christine, I will see you guys September 9th on the Second Line Show.
Yeah.
Everybody,
second line
please
show.
come check out
Yes.
Nola's Second Line show. It is
Yeah, it's awesome.
fantastic.
It's awesome.
And
A
where's
lot
the
of fun.
second line show gonna be on the 25th?
On the 25th.
The book club. That's our book
That's
club.
right. We are simulcasting the Second Line Show on High Society Book Club on Facebook. It will be on YouTube. It will be on my page. It will be all over. But we are so happy that High Society offered to host and simulcast us on the 26th. It's going to be a great show. CNE, I will see you on September 9th. And the 26th, we will have Laura Kemp and Carla Vergot over on High Society. And it's going to be on the 25th. So we are doing kind of a Fat Tuesday version.
Yes.
Usually on Wednesdays, but High Society has been great about accommodating us on a Tuesday because they've got lots of folks that are joining over there and their calendar was filling up quite quickly. So Laura and Carla and I will be on the 25th for our Fat Tuesday because who says it has to just be on the real Fat Tuesday? We're going to party down on the 26th over at High Society. So thank you so much, Christine and Holly Ward, for letting us take over for an hour or so on your page as well. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're so welcome, and I am excited about it.
Gonna rock.
Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, all those things that every YouTuber tells you to do. We'd like to drum up our audience. We'd like to share everything and expand the Pandaverse because this is a lot of fun. We love books. We love talking about books. We love reading books. So
Subscribe, guys.
all right.
It was great.
We're pretty
Gotta run.
interesting sometimes.
We'll
It
close.
was great seeing you, Christine, Nola. See you later.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye, guys.